So then, now we've set up Firebase on the front end, we've initialized it so that our front end application now knows how to reach out to our Firebase project that we've created over here, to this project and this database, and interact with it. So now that we've created all of this setup and this config, we've exported the Firebase app.firestore function from this file, which means now we can go into another file, such as a component, and start to interact with the data by importing this into it. So let's do that. Let's go over to our index.view, which is the front page. Now, currently, what we're doing is using all of this dummy data. We no longer want to do that. We want to interact with our Firestore database to retrieve that data. So now let's get rid of these two objects. What we will be doing is keeping this data property called Smoothies on this object, because when we do retrieve the data from the Firestore database, we'll be adding it to this array and we'll still be storing it locally once we've retrieved it. Does that make sense? So that every time we make a change to it, we can interact with this rather than directly just going out and interacting with the database. So now let us first of all import the database into this file. So we exported it here. Now we're importing it into index.view. So to do that, we'll say import, and I'm going to call this DB for database. You can call it whatever you like. DB is nice and short and makes sense. So this is from, and then at to represent the root component, which is source, /Firebase, because we go into the Firebase folder we created, then /init. So we've imported now this thing right here into this file, and we're referring to it as the database because at the end of the day, that's what it is. The Firestore is the database. So we can use this database object now that we've imported to interact with that database very, very simply. How do we do this and where do we do this? Well, first of all, when do we want to interact with the database? At what point during the component lifecycle do we want to do that? Well, I'd like to do it in the created lifecycle hook. Remember, that's when a component has been created, but not yet rendered to the DOM. So during that hook, we can use this object, this database object, to interact with our database, retrieve the information, then use that information to populate this property right here, so that when we're outputting that property, everything is fine. So then let's create this created lifecycle hook, like so. Okay, so inside here, we want to fetch data from the Firestore. Okay, now the way we do that is we take our database object first of all we've imported. Then we can say dot collection, and we can say which collection we want to now interact with. Well, we've created a collection called Smoothies. So all we do is pass in a string called Smoothies. And now this is going to look for that Smoothies collection. Now, once we have that collection and we have a reference to it, what would we like to do? Well, we'd like to get all the data from that collection. There's 2 documents in it at the minute. We want to get them. So we use a method called .get. Pretty self-explanatory, right? Now then, this returns a promise. Remember, a promise is returned when something takes a little bit of time. And we can tack on a .then method to a promise to say, okay, we'll fire the function inside this .then method when the promise returns, when it's complete. Remember, if you want to learn more about promises, check out that last section on this course. All right then, so inside this then method, we want to pass through an ES6 function, and this function will take a snapshot as a parameter. So this snapshot right here, this refers to the state of this Smoothies collection at that current point in time, okay? Now that snapshot is going to contain 2 documents at present. In the future, it could contain 10 documents or 15 different documents. At the minute, there's 2, but either way, what we want to do is grab that document in each case, right? So the snapshot will contain many documents. We want to cycle through that to get each individual document. So the way we do that is by saying snapshot.forEach. Then inside this forEach method, we can pass through a callback function, and that callback function will take each document as a parameter. Again, we're using an arrow function here. So now we have access to each document as we cycle through the collection snapshot. So Let's first of all log this to the console and see what it looks like. We'll say console.log the document. So let's save that and view our project in a browser and inspect element just so we can get the console over here. I'll zoom in a little bit so you can see that. I'm going to refresh so that we get that created hook, and then at some point we're going to see something logged to the console. You can see it twice. So we get this query snapshot right here. Okay, this is the document. And the reason we see it twice is because there's two documents, so it's outputting both of those documents. Now we can see down here we have this document property as well, and we have the data inside that, and we have these key properties. There's loads of different things inside this document. Now this isn't the actual data we really want. We're not concerned with all of this stuff. This contains information about the document, everything about that, along with a load of different properties and methods that Firebase provides us attached to that individual document. We don't need all of that. We just want the data that that document holds. We want the name of the smoothie and the ingredients at the end of the day, and the ID maybe. So instead of just using the doc, we can say doc.data. And this method gets us all of the data from that doc. So if we save this now and rerun this in the browser over here, I'll clear the console, rerun this, and we should now see two different objects, one for each smoothie, each document, and now we're getting just the data we want from each of those smoothies. So we get the ingredients, the slug, the title. That's cool, right? Cool. So then, now we also get, I'm going to log this out separately, an ID property from each doc. That's not stored in the data. Remember, when we created these records over here, we didn't store an ID property in the actual data. The ID is part of the doc itself, not a property of it. So we don't get it from the data right here. We get it from directly this doc object. So we can say doc.id, and that will give us the ID of this document. So let's view this in a browser. Now we can see, in fact, if I just clear that and refresh so it's not confusing, we should now see the objects and also the ID of each document. Cool, right? Because we're going to need those IDs in a minute. So now then, we've gone out, we've referenced the collection, we've got all of the information from that collection, and then we're returned this snapshot, which is a view of that collection at this moment in time and the different documents in it. We've cycled through the snapshot, we've grabbed each document inside that snapshot, and we've logged the data and the ID of that document to the console. We don't really need to do this, do we? So let's get rid of that for now. What we really want to do is create a smoothie based on this document and then push that smoothie to this property right here, because this ultimately is what we're cycling through in the template. So what we'll do is we'll create a local variable called smoothie. So we'll say let smoothie equal doc.data. So we're grabbing that data object from the document, and that is now this smoothie. So we also want to tack on the ID property. So we'll say smoothie.id. So we're adding that property to this local variable right now, and we'll set that equal to doc.id, which we get from the document. Cool. So now we have that local smoothie. We want to push it to this array right here. So we'll say this.smoothies to grab this thing right here. Then we'll use a method called push, which pushes an extra item into that array. The thing we want to push onto it is the smoothie we've just created right here, which should have all of these properties on the data object now and the ID property as well. So now that we have all those, and we're doing it for each document, so there should be two items in here now, it should make no difference as to how we output them because they have all of the same property names. The only difference is the ID is slightly different. Before it was 1 or 2, now it's that random auto-generated ID provided by Google Firebase. So if we save this, then nothing really should happen on the front end. It should all still work, and we can see those two items right here. That's pretty cool, right? Now, obviously, this delete method won't delete it from the database yet because this delete method is not hooked up. We're only retrieving data from the database at the minute. But let's just make sure this works. If we add on a new document, I'm going to refresh to make sure we can see all that stuff here. And then I will, in a second, when this loads, add a new document. So I'll go to add document. Document ID will be auto-generated. The title of this smoothie will be Mario Magic, and then we'll add a field. The slug will be Mario-Magic, and then we need some ingredients, which will be an array. And inside this array, what we'll do is give a value of peaches. We'll do mushroom and banana skin. All right, so save that. So now we have those 3 documents over here. Now, if I refresh this, when this component is created, it should go out and get that extra data. So let me refresh, and hopefully, fingers crossed, we should see 3 items here. Now we do Morning Mood, Mario Magic, and Ninja Brew. Awesome. So now we're successfully reaching out to our Firestore database and retrieving that information to show it on our page.